Hello and welcome to this NAV Know-How webinar from Metaphorix. In this session we're going to be looking at document approval for Dynamics NAV 2013 role tailored. We will have a look at the document approval setup, how we assign approval limits to our users, and how we enable the documents on which we want the document approvals to be applied to. We will also have a look at how we can send notifications of the requests for our document approval to our approvers. Once we've checked that out, we'll then go and have a look at creating a sales order, although of course this can be for purchase side as well. We'll have a look at how we send the approval, and when we have sent that approval, how the order status on the General Files tab of the order is changed to pending approval. We will then have a look at the email notification that will be sent to the approver, and how we can, using web services, click on our link from our email to open up our web page in order for our approver to approve that document. We will then go through a couple of different options. I'll show you how we can run through the approval itself, and also what the outcome is when we actually go through a rejection of the approval. So in order to do this, I'm having to actually have two users or two logins set up. At the moment you will see that I am down the bottom here logged in as Claire. Claire is the order processor and myself, Pauline, is going to be the approver. So we'll have a look at that approval setup in the first instance, and then I will flick between the two users so we can see what happens. So first of all, using our search box, I'm just going to go to the document approval area, and the first thing that we will look at is the approval setup. We have some various bits of information that are required. Part of the approvals process is that you can enter in a due date formula so that you can specify from when an approval is generated in the first instance when the approver should approve that document, and if you're using that functionality you can then from the approvals send out requests to those approvers if they haven't actually approved those documents. Format of that is just something similar to 3D for 3 days. Document approvals must have an approval administrator, and it's the administrator who will actually have the ability to go into the various document approval requests and change who the approver is. So in situations where people are on holiday, that type of thing, the system administrator or approval administrator can go in and change who the approver is going to be. You also have the ability to request, when an approver rejects an approval, that the person who's making that rejection also applies a reason as to why the rejection has taken place. Additionally, you don't have to, but you can use the notifications, and this, in this particular version 2013, it is email approvals or email notifications, and you can specify which emails that you want to be associated with your system, i.e. send an email for approvals, cancellations, rejections, or indeed if the approval has been delegated to a different approver. And if you are using the due date formula, as I said earlier, you can run a report for overdue approvals, and here it will just tell you feedback to say when you last run that report. So that's just the general setup. But now, just come back there, now we have to specify the users and those people that are going to be applied as far as the approvals is concerned. Now, just to make this quite straightforward and easy to see, I've just included just 2 users. There's Claire's, who we are logged on at the moment. So you enter the user ID, and it is just simply done by clicking on the drop down and you pick up the user. You can specify as to whether you want to use the salesperson or purchaser code as the approver, or the approver ID as in a user. So it's entirely up to you. Some organisations have a situation where certain users will be attached to certain salespeople, and therefore the approvals will go to the salesperson code rather than an approver. But you can have both if required. In the approver ID, you specify who the approver is going to be, and in this case it's myself, so Pauline F here, and you'll see that I have a line for myself which I'll come to in a moment. In the sales approval limit here, this is telling the system that if Claire creates a sales order, and I'm saying sales order, but of course we have the same ability on the purchase side, but in this case I've said for a sales order, Claire can create an order to a value of £1,000. Also, from a purchase point of view, she is allowed to create a purchase order up to £500. You'll notice there's also a request amount approval limit, and that is relating to documents such as sales and purchase quotes. Okay, in this case I have said that if a quote is created, or Claire creates a quote, and the amount is anything over £1, then the approvals will be kicked in. This is basically telling the system that Claire cannot authorise a quote at any amount, unless of course it's less than £1. You can also enter a substitute for this approver, and in this case that would actually apply to myself being the approver, and I'll come to that in a moment. And then the email address, so this is the email that will be used if there are any documents or approval documents to go back to Claire, so that's her address. I can then, on my line, because I am the approver, I can leave my salesperson blank and the approver, because I have ultimate approval here. So I don't have any value in the sales amount, but I do have an unlimited sales approval, and it is simply just a case of ticking the box. The same applies for the purchase side, and again I am ultimate approver on the purchasing, and again for sales or purchase quotes. And again I just have to pop in my email address so that the emails can go backwards and forwards as required. Obviously, if I had just a particular limit, and perhaps my limit was £5,000, and I can't do that with that ticked quite right, okay, and on here I might have 750, for example. So in this case I would then have to choose an ultimate approver. So this might be, for example, Andrew. So in here my approver would be Andrew, and he would then have the ultimate approval limits. But I'm just going to keep it simple, because otherwise to keep logging in and out of users will be a little bit tiresome. So I'm just going to remove that. and give myself unlimited approval. So once we've set our users up and applied the various approver IDs and limits, etc., we do have the ability, if we go to the Actions ribbon, to actually test that we have the basic structure in place for our approvals. And we just simply have to click on the Setup Test. We pick the user that we want to check, and then in here we can choose which approvals we want to check in first place. Of course, you can do all requests if you want, but again, just to show it in a simple format, I'm just going to do the sales approval setup. Go to preview. Of course, you could hard copy print this, and basically this very simple report is just telling us that for user ID Claire, her approver is Pauline F, but Claire's sales limit amount is £1,000. She has no unlimited, and it is checked that the basic format of that is okay. So sequence 1 is Claire, what happens? Sequence 2 would be myself, so Pauline F, and who it would be going to. And the reason that's there is because I still left Andrew in. Okay, now at the moment that is okay, but I will remove Andrew C because I've now changed it that I'm the ultimate approver. But if I had left Andrew in as my approver, then there would have been an additional line with Pauline F going through to Andrew C. So let me just take that out because that is how you would actually have that set up. Okay, so Claire has a limit of £1,000 on the sales side, so that's lovely, and I am her approver. Once we've done this particular setup, we then need to determine which documents we are going to include in our document approval, and we do that through the approval templates here. So from here I'm going to go to Edit List, because then we get another screen anyway, and you will notice that we have some additional columns. So we have an approval code, i.e. the type of document that we're going to be using, and we can code that up to be any particular code, but it's sensible to keep it along these particular lines. And then we just, against each of those lines, we say what the approvals, how it's going to work. So in the case of our little demonstration today, I'm going to be looking at our sales order line. I have set up that it is based on the approver as opposed to the salesperson or purchaser, but of course that will work exactly the same way if you use the salesperson or purchaser code. So it's approver, what the document type is, and here are all the different types of documents that you can use within document approvals. Then how we are looking at that approval. Is it based on approval limits, on credit limits, request limits, or no limits? Now the approval limits is as we have set up our particular document approval. You can set up that if a customer or a vendor, from a vendor that you're going over the, from a customer point of view, if they're going over the credit limit, you can say from a user aspect, if they generate, for example, an order over the credit limits, then in that case you would want to do something, send a request to, again, another user or an approver to get approval to create the document. Request limits, as I said earlier, is for your quotes, and no limits you set up if you want to be able to delegate to other users. You can also set up additional approvers. So this would be in relationship to perhaps a user that is outside of the document approvals. Perhaps in a smallish company you want things like credit limits to go through to someone who's not set up actually within the approvals itself. And then to activate that particular document, you just simply click on the enable tick box in the enable column. So we've set up our document approval, we've set up our users, we've activated our document that we want to use on the approvals. So let's go and have a little look at how that actually works. So from Claire's, who's my sales order processor, I'll go to our role centre and I'll just click on our sales orders. The creation of the document itself is exactly the same as you would for any other document. So generate the next number. I'll select my customer. In this case I am filtering on the name field, so that's allowed me just to type that into the customer number field, and I'm going to do it for the Canon group. You will get normal warnings in terms of credit limit checks, etc., and this customer is well over their credit limit, but nonetheless, as an order processor, I've received the order from my customer, so I'm going to pop it on. At this point, pop in the order number, and then I will come down to my order lines. As per normal, I will just pop in my product, and we haven't actually got any in stock, but again this is just standard NAV. Dependent on your internal processes, you will carry on as normal. In this case I'm just going to say yep, okay, and again of course it's going to tell me that they're still over their limit, which is fine. Now if you remember, Claire had a approval limit of £1,000, so this is going to take Claire over her approval limit. And just to prove that that does work, normal course of events, you will generate your order and then just click on the release button. And because the document approval has been set up and sales orders have been enabled, it is telling me the document can only be released when the approval process is complete. So at this point in time, the status is still as open. So we go to the Actions ribbon, go to the Send Approval Requests, and what's happening in the background now is that that email is being generated, and the user does get feedback to say that it does require a further approval and entries have been created. So we'll say OK to that, and I'll just close. Before I do, you'll notice here that indeed the status has changed to pending approval. So from this user's point of view, we can have a look at, or Claire can have a look at all of those orders that are waiting for approval. So we can see that we've got our order number, number 4, and it's the Canon group. At this point, if Claire had made a mistake and didn't mean to send through that approval, she can actually click on the cancel approval request, and that will simply just send a message to myself as the approver to say that I have cancelled that request. And if that would be the case, then the order would be put back onto status of being open. So Claire can always see exactly what's going on as to which orders she's still waiting to be approved. And you'll notice that there is actually an approved list, so these are previous orders that Claire has sent for an approval and that have been approved. I'm now just going to pop into my my email, because the email has come to me as the approver. So we can see here Pauline F, and we can see that Claire has sent that approval through to me. And within our body of our email, it tells me as the approver what the amount is, who the customer is, the date, and the available amount. And as we already know, the Canon Group is well over their limit. And what I'll do now is I'll show you the view that you can have if you have the web client installed, so that I don't need to be logged on as Pauline, which I'm not at the moment, I'm just logged on as Claire, and I can just simply click on that link, say, okay, yes, I give permissions to go into the approvals, and there we see we have our approval entry screen for, and now you can see that I am actually in Pauline F. And at this point I can now go and have a look at the document to see exactly what has been ordered. I can decide whether I want to approve that or not, and it is simply taking one of these options up here. And in this case, I'm simply just going to go to approve the document. Now, at the same time as my doing the approval, the email is going to be generated for Claire. Now, I can't log on to Claire's email box, but what I can do is, because of the way I've set up, I can see here that it has been approved. Okay, so back to my approvals, I can see that that is no longer sitting in my approvals box. If we now go to Claire's, hopefully, I will see the 104. It is now in my approved list and out of my approvals. But what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to show you how we can send in a rejection, and I'll do that, I'll work on that same order. So in this case, after the document has been approved, Claire has had a phone call from the Canon Group, and they have asked Claire to increase the quantity of the product being ordered to a quantity of 2. And of course, to do that, I have to reopen my order. Now, you'll notice that that order has now disappeared, and of course that is because I was on the approved list in my role centre. So I'll just pop back to my order. There it is, number 4. So you do have to be careful with filtered list views. And as I say, in this case, I've reopened and I'm going to change that to a quantity of 2. Still going through the same checks in terms of credit checks and the fact that we don't have any inventory. So again, at this point, the status is now open. I have to go through that approval process again. So again, I will send my approval request through to myself in effect. Again, my order has gone as pending approval. And this time I'll show you from a role centre point of view how I can see that approval rather than just going from the email itself. So from my role centre, because I'm an accounting manager, I do have an approvals area here, and there I can see that approval come through again. So at this point, again, I will just go and check that document, and this time, because there's even more value on the order, it was okay, the £4,000, but now it's gone up to £8,000. Not going to have that, so I'll just close that, and this time I'm actually going to reject the order or the approval. And if you remember, on the document approvals setup, I ticked the box to say that a rejection comment was required. And so in here, they must pay last month's invoices first, or whatever that message needs to say. So I'll say OK to that. And we're just in a little not responding moment at the moment. So that has now been rejected. It has been removed from my approval entries. And now if I go to my emails, I can see there's my email that has been rejected by myself. The order has been rejected and the reason for paying. Okay, as I say, I'm picking up all the emails just the way because of I am the controller, if you like, from the email point of view. This would have just gone through to Claire. So at this point, from Claire's point of view, just checking I'm back in Claire's, I can come to my sales order, I can open it up, and again it's now no longer pending approval. It has been rejected by Pauline. I've received, as Claire, the email to say it has been rejected because invoices need to be paid for last month's outstanding invoices. So at that point, we have created our sales order, we have sent through our approvals, we have rejected it, and now the order comes back. And at this point, it's just down to normal internal processes as to how you wish to handle that. Okay. So, in summary, we've had a look at our document approval setup, how we attach the various users and apply those approval limits based on either the salesperson as being the approver or the approver ID. We've had a look at how we enable the templates that we want to use and how we can set up for email notifications. We've checked our sales order, created it, sent through our approval, seen how when the order is sent for approval, the status changes to pending approval, and we've seen the notification that we have received as an approver from, in my case, from Claire's. We've had a look at how we can simply approve the order and how, from Claire's perspective, we could see that it had been approved, and indeed how we could reject the approval. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this session. As per all of our webinars, a recording of this has been made and you can download it from the address shown on your screen. If you have any questions, you can either email Debbie at debbie.c@metaphorix.co.uk or send an email through to support@Metaphorix, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.